in technology, basically what I was trying to visualize and what I was trying to say, that there are some projects which are standalone but very tall. There are mass scale mass scale buildings. We say around somebody is doing 13 lakhs per square, 13 lakh square feet per annum. Somebody is doing 7-8 lakhs per annum. Somebody is doing 5 lakhs per annum. But I would say that we should apply technologies to its merit. For example, if we are going for a very high mass housing, say 13 lakhs per annum, then I would say that the technology that you should, and a repetitive one also, then I would say that the right technology is the precast technology. Now, precast technology is now becoming a very common thing in India, and I think in the near future, there will be companies will be setting up plants and they will be supplying all these elements that will be desired by us. And I think many of you are using this aluminum shuttering for your mass housing, and you can all understand the advantage of using the aluminum shuttering: speed, quality, and cost also. Now, this slip form is a standalone building. When you are going for ultra high-rise buildings, say beyond 30, 40 story building, 50, 60, whatever, then this slip form is very important, because this is an automatic one. The entire structure goes along with the structure, which is a mechanized one, and it helps you in repeating the slab cycles faster. And the fourth one is the wooden structure. Even I am not against this wooden shuttering, but what I would say, apply your engineering brains into it, and make a mechanized sort of wooden shuttering, which will yield you at the and applying all these things, I think 50% of your construction problem can be sorted out. Now, the next slide is on another some other technologies. For example, there are in Calcutta already. We are having some talks with some suppliers, that no more the AAC blocks are two blocks for 600 by 200 by 200. No, these long panels on the top left corner are long walls which are 2400 high, 600 wide, and they can be put together with a male-female joint, the tongue and groove joint, which you can later on put a tape and just put it and it's finished. And thereby what happens, the number of joints, the number of reinforcement between the mortar that you have to provide, all these things, cracks, etc., all these things can be taken care of. The second one is the plus wall, which is a very interesting wall in the internal flexible walls where you can use it. 9 mm cement board on two sides, separated by a separator, and you pour foam concrete inside it, so it becomes lightweight, as well as cast in situ, and the cracks that you are complaining these days, which are will not get at all. Now, the third one with the left bottom, ABC. Now, this is a technology which I think will be very important for you. Is the base isolation. Now, what is base isolation? Base isolation is in fact, this is has become now mandatory in public places in Zone 4 and Zone 5 in government buildings. Is that the entire earthquake forces will not be transmitted to your structure. Thereby, the forces that we do go on designing, putting reinforcement, making the concrete thicker, will no more there. And the other one, which also is going to has already come up in India, is the shock absorbers, which are very, very important, and which are very important in the kind of winds that we have experienced in the recent past. If we put this inside in some places, in the critical places in your structure, which can absorb the shocks, which can absorb the movement of the building, and thereby the forces and the reinforcement and the concrete, etc., will be much less, even in the foundation. Now, the fourth one is the most important in today's scenario, I tell you, is the wind tunnel. It's not for the building forces, it's not for this thing, it's for the human comfort, it's for the glazing, it's for the canopies that you erect at the ground level. The ground motion, the ground movement comfort is also taken care of by this wind tunnel. And I tell you, the whatever the wind forces that are given in the codal provisions are statistically best, So something, the wind that we experience, which is maybe 50, 60 years we haven't experienced. And see, we are designing for our building for a 50 years return period. So we are in the marginal thing. Who knows that tomorrow it will not be much more than this. So wind tunnel test has become, specifically for high-rise buildings, has become very common these days. The cost is not too much, but the importance that it will give is immense. And in the recent cyclone, we can see some of the figures, the detailing, the anchoring of the plants and the canopies that we have designed. There is not a single defect, but it's aftermath of this cyclone. See, so the detailing and is so important in doing your structure. These help because I tell you, this helped because we did a wind load study in this project. So everything was clear what is going to happen there.
True. So what I think, what you were saying, Utpal, is about root ball anchoring through cable ties. That makes the structure or the tree planted, because we now have got terrace gardens and terrace pavilions.
Right.
So they need to become more resilient to this thing. So basically you need a root ties at root ball, and that's what we see today. The amount of loss that landscaping has had, that's very sad. And I think we are all responsible for this when we don't crop up, when we don't give sufficient root ball to actually develop. And we only think that it's about the top part of the tree that we need. We are actually not understanding nature very well. We actually have to plan the foundation consideration for the tree, not just the top part or the canopy. It's about the foundation. So please give sufficient green. So when we also have, in the real estate, when we actually compromise with 700 and 600 green strip and try to put it back again into the green, 20% green, we should also understand in 20-30% of that 600 wide or 900 wide, we cannot put trees, and they don't qualify for trees. And if you put the trees, they go knocking down in this kind of cyclone. So you should understand that a minimum width of about 3 meters would be needed for the large tree plantation. So that's the way the landscape should also develop in terms of perimeter and the science of plantation. Because if 20%, 27% advantage comes from landscape vitalities, or the way the landscape is in terms of real estate valuation, please try to understand a devastated landscape actually going to cull away a lot of loss, then take away the leads and the impression of the real estate. Well, we have a couple of few slides left. It's essentially about sourcing. Many sourcing and resourcing is the word. I take one slide, and I would request Utpal to take the other slide. Just a sec. So what happens is when you have to evaluate sources. So sourcing is not just about cost and negotiation. We often leave the thinking, okay, that's about negotiation. We have to make a comparison of credentials, consistency of this person, whether they can do quality control. Does the person have a good quality control at the manufacturing area? Delivery time, of course, we know packaging standards. And because normally we just get rid of this understanding of packaging standards. I've just given one example here. We order a tile, and we order a lot of tile. And the tile comes back, and we find 60 to 50 to even 35% of the tile broken because of the poor packaging standards. And we say we're going to not give money to this person and wait till he supplies back again, takes back the money. Fine, you did save the capital there, but who talks about the lead time wasted that you've done on site? What talks about the time which is taken off the site? On-site space is about money. On-site space is about planning and creating efficiencies in construction. So we have to actually understand packaging standards is something wonderful, very important, vital. Analyze them, whether the person who's supplying is actually giving us good sourcing packaging standards. Transport cost. See, if we just promote local sourcing, and that's by the architects essentially, and the guys who do the finishing products, if we can overall increase our local sourcing, we would actually help the reduction of construction costs by transport costs. Because even sometimes the product is almost like 30% to 40% of the cost just increases because some granite is coming from somewhere else, and whereas a simple quota can work here only about creatively applying it. Inspection compliances, you need to take sources who will actually help us keep compliances. If there's a tile which they sell with the tolerance, try to keep it with the spacers and not together, because that's a great person has to come and say this is the kind of quality inspections. On-site support, associated skill, जो हम source कर रहे हैं, whether we do have an associated skill about it. It's not just able to put it there, but how to lift, whether to how much of life do we have shelf life there, do we have enough space there to keep it is safe and not get affected. Are the other processes dependent or independent of that? There's so many other technology compatibility. Today, if we bought a higher technology, is this material sourcing something is compliable to the technology or not? Sometimes we are going for higher, better construction technology, but a poorer finishing technology. And about risk assessment, how much of risk do we have trying this source? Of course, cost of negotiation takes care of it. Simply 6 to 8% reduction can actually come by a good sourcing, but we have to make an evaluating criteria and keep it in front of us and give weightage to that until we are convinced about that. A simple slider. It is not about the great negotiator, but the great organizer who can actually tabulate data which should come. Everything can be laid out in terms of time, and everything ultimately can fall down to money. So in this credentials, let credentials also speak about it, because a good credential guy will take back and take responsibility and also give you come back again with his, if they made a mistake, with something better, and take control and take accountability. A recycled slide. I'll just talk about this slide. This is an interesting slide, and this came when Utpal was mentioning, and his colleague Ankit, that a lot of scrap goes waste, and this can be again got back and reused for non-structural elements, and that is something so fast and can be done. Huge amount of scrap. Dada, I think you can speak something on this, Utpal.
Yes, this is a nice picture, and this the top left one is a real picture from a site I have taken intentionally. See,
I often wonder this person has actually wasted enough or used enough. When I look at this slide.
See, now the answer that I got is this will be sold at the scrap value. Well, why? You can use it in so many places. You can use it in your internal roads. You can use in your manholes. You can use in your that reinforcement that I told you about at the roof. That mesh reinforcement, that you can use it there. So there are many applications which we can all guide you there. That these reinforcement, it need not be sold as a scrap, I tell you. And again, I'm trying to visualize. It's an idea that came to my mind. I can see the huge amount of pain that the people take while breaking the pile heads. We don't allow them to use the pneumatic hammer there because of the vibrations. So the amount of pain that is taken, and at the end of the day, the entire pile has to be transported. That debris has to be transported. Which I feel, can it be done? It's a question from my side. Can it be used in some places? One thing that I was trying to visualize, if we can use as a soling on the basement itself. For example, if we can break them into some pieces which are not regular. Yes, not breaking of them is not regular pieces. It's not possible. But in spite of that, if we can do some sort of a sized break, and then put it on the surface of a sloppy surface where we struggle to put our foot, then I think that can be used as a recycled material. These are the two things. There are several other which we can discuss again.
I just want to add here. We as an architect often prescribe materials, and because of the non-sizing, we often do not make. There's a compatibility of a planning grid and the compatibility of the sizing. If there's a feet, the tiles come into 300, 600, and 450 or so. If we can keep a planning grid of our spaces in sync with that material grid vis-a-vis, then we will be able to optimize wastage. And if we can that let's use all the waste back again into the system, at least in terms of finishing, we can be more creative and not just waste away. Of course, we have to be a little cautious about understanding how much of labor component goes there, but sometimes one can use fantastic stuff and be creative in specific areas and take care of a lot of wastage. And as a conscious person, we can, if the waste is not used back, it's thrown away into civic infrastructure and really causes a lot of issues back again. So we should try to prevent or waste away resources and recycle them. That even if it is about 0.5% or even 1.5%, that's a huge amount of conscious call that we need to take. Dada, can you just talk on this?
Yes. The next one is, again, as Vivek was mentioning about the sourcing. The sourcing is, of course, the basic material is the concrete and the steel. Now, if this concrete can be sourced from your site itself, if we install even a mini batching plant, that is good enough. But produce the concrete at site itself instead of bringing it from outside. It's my suggestion that it's always, if possible, I know there are some certain locations where there is the space constraint, but it is always better to have your own concrete machineries at site. And the second one is the reinforcement. Now, as Vivek and me came out, as Vivek said, that we are now going into the pre-engineered sort of, we are stressing about pre-engineered projects. Now, in that event, while we have done all the details, the reinforcements, the BBS, all done, then why can't we get the right cut steel from the manufacturer? Then it becomes a non-wastage, and at the same time, the wastage that we normally take about, say, I don't know, maybe 1 to 2%, it varies between people to people, but we can bring it down to 0.2 to 0.3%. That's what we should always.
And this is where the BIM can actually help you to pre-plan your wastage back again into the system. And I urge my viewers here, we really want that, we have to use the knowledge and the technology to pre-plan our wastages and not just handle the wastage. If we can use the wastage back again into prefabrication or into a smart usage in the planning stage, then we will be really efficient. And this is a time when we actually should be there. There should be a section in the planning division which actually handles this kind of a BIM implications, the wastage handling also. Well, then towards the last slide of business, the management is a big subject, but important what we have seen out of many things, and this can be a little eye-opener that, while we know that this quality, time and cost come together, what is important to understand is kisko value deta hai. So if an organization sets up a value system in its system, this is what I'm going to do value as, you automatically come to a very satisfactory understanding of quality, cost and time. This is what I need to do because this is what I value, whether it's a project wise or whether it's an organization wise. You need to set your value standards of your product. Since we don't do it, either we leave it to a consultant to decide, or we say let the marketing decide, or then we eventually come back and say, oh, the management doesn't like it, or we say, oh, the architect doesn't like it. Please set the values there. This is the value. And while we're talking here, we are also not forgetting that we're always think we need to understand about very important 3 things. Let's say the one important point that comes to my mind is, can we not establish a 3R system, which is generally about recording everything that we are doing, whether it's about meeting, whether it's about PMC meeting, or everything should be recorded. If not, if it can be video or digital, it's very important. Not only it takes care of your distractions under control, but it holds up a record to review. And you should review your meetings, review your data, and then generate a report. It's not just about collating data and keeping it for contingency or someone is going to ask, but report back again. If the first 2 months are reported back, then the next 20 months of construction can be refined. If 10 months can be reported, then the next 10 months can be refined. So this is a continuous process of 3R. Record everything. And it is perfectly fine to record human behavior and review them and report them. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. And when you do that thing, people just get onto the discipline. So that's about the 3R, whether it's about the individual meeting or about the data handling. What important part that we came to know that, supervision, we often try to not give importance to the supervision, and it's only about heads that we think. No, it's about training. Can our supervisors be trained before they do execute the work? Can the training can be done? It can be a 3-day training on the specific. This is the work. These are the steps that I want you to do. This is the way you're going to handle the site area where the material is going to come. This is a sequence of job, and that's the finishing activity. This is documentation in the evening. That's a documentation in the morning and the afternoon, and that's a reporting every Friday. For example, if you can do that supervision, and sometimes the lack of supervision, good supervision, sometimes the lack of good understanding of supervision ends up on an average to plus minus 8%. You can save or increase. That's about the efficiency you can create by simple supervision. But what we need to do is on-site digital supervision will now come. You don't have so many supervisors, and while the next 6 to 8 months time, hopefully we restrict to that number, is going to be mostly digital supervision. You would have cameras, and this person is going to sit down and can handle 5 locations. So while physically he's able to handle 2 locations going up and down and things like this, but with sitting in a particular place, he may be digitally able to control and understand and instruct. And then physically, of course, you can go. You can increase your more efficiency of supervision and come to this the situation of good quality, and then saving a lot of time and money eventually. Pre-construction documentation, as I said, that when you do everything else, let the methodology be properly written and understood, that whether that my team is able to understand the technology, the pre-construction, or it's not adequate. If the person who does not understand these 10 activities should not be given responsible, or he or she should be trained adequately before the responsibility is given. We have this is evident, the delays, the lags, the miscommunications, and so many things arise just because of smart supervision training. I request and request everyone that we should be able to manage, and management is quite important. You can actually 10 to 12 to 15% if you can actually handle all the stuff, out of which half is nothing but a good supervisor. Friends, we don't have time much for this. We can take some questions if we are allowed to take some questions. We should be able to taking another maybe 10-15 minutes. And but finally, before ending this formal thing, both of us agree to one thing: there is nothing to beat but an honest practice. If consultants, if contractors, if supervisors, see, it's insan hai. And we know that while your systems are there, but this is something so wonderful. We cannot take away the honesty in terms of design, detailing. Every aspect of it needs a certain amount of commitment. Whatever you do, whatever you plan, commitment in terms of honesty is very well needed. Friends, we'll take questions after this, and from here I would open back to the organizers. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you,
Utpal. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you for the fantastic presentation. I think we've covered almost all aspects of design and construction, which I'm sure all our attendees have found helpful. It's extremely helpful and important to have all consultants on board at the initial stage for better design efficiency and managing costs as per our desired budget. We should strive towards minimizing changes in the construction stage, spending a little more time in planning to prevent cost overruns. I think your presentation has covered all those points in detail, including BIM, which I think more and more developers have now started using. So I think from there, I think we should move to the questions. There are a few.
Yes, we do have some questions here.
I think the first one that we can take is, I think these days, a lot of people are talking about implementing new technology in construction. Are there any areas in particular that you feel that we are lagging in them?
No, not at all. To my mind, we are not at all lagging. It's only that what I feel is, as Vivek said, that the options, while doing an options, the automatic technology that will come to your mind, you use to that technology to the merit of the project. You don't force that technology into that project. So once that iteration has been done, yes, this I want to do it like this. So the technology will automatically come. All the libraries are there with us. There is no lagging behind with us. We can do any technology, not a problem. But we need to use it to the right merit. That's all I
want to add one thing. There are a lot of technologies, and it is not about confusing yourself to what technology, but it's about, as I said, the last slide, if you just see the time quality the parameter and the cost parameter, and then there's a value. Your value that you set for the projects, you should, when you have a PID or your organization value, you first understand this is what the value I give to this project or the process, and then see with this technology, whether it is about the glazing, construction, whether it's about assembly, prefabrication, whatever you call it, whether these three parameters totally set in satisfying the value that you have set for this one. So set your values, and then these parameters automatically you'll be able to select which technology you should use.
Right. So one question I have, which others have also asked, is we have started using MyOne or aluminium formwork a lot in our construction. Now there is one concern that it increases a lot of heat inside the apartments. So MyOne is being used more in affordable housing where the repetitions are more. So is that a cause of concern? Now the second thing is, yeah, I think we can first answer that.
Yeah, see, aluminium shuttering is nothing to do with your heat. It's the thickness of concrete that it's the thickness of the concrete that you are going to use it. Yes, if it's a 125, 130 thickness, there is a concern of heat, of course. But the 160, that is one of the minimum thickness that has been prescribed in our code from the fire perspective. I have experienced that I don't feel uncomfortable inside that room. And people are, I completed one project, it's a big one that has been completed. People staying there inside, and nobody has complained till it. Of course, you can add a value to it. You can add some insulations inside it to take care of the heat from outside. But in an affordable sector, or maybe even in projects, 160 mm is good enough for taking care of that heat load, which is a concerning one.
I'll just add a small bite here. Yeah, I'll add a small bite here. You know, Rohit, it is perfectly fine to use RCC prescribed in terms of fire resistivity and structural stability, and the rest of the work should be done by an architect. For example, if it is facing the southwest or the south or the west, the heat insulation or the thermal heat lag. Concrete definitely has a higher heat lag, or it can retain more heat than the AAC or brick or something like that. Okay, but definitely one architect can plan a shading device or a chaja or a continuous shading band, and it can reduce the heat gain on the surface. So it is a combination of architectural projection which will just help you to reduce your heat gain on the concrete surface. So there is an answer.
Okay.
Nice. Very nice.
There's one more question about the use of AAC blocks. Now, you said that because the companies are supplying a lower density AAC block, these cracks are coming. But so on a regular basis, to check this on site is very, very difficult.
No, what I'm saying, what I tried to say is that we need to have a talk jointly with all the suppliers together. That boss, because in North India, in the Western India, I tell you, the density is much higher than that they are giving to us. That's why I'm telling you. So that's why that density cannot be increased. The more the density, I tell you, it's an advantage to you to get less wastage also, because I can see that a number of them, 20 to 30% of them are broken. So you cannot use them. So and because of the lesser density, these wastage are happening.
So we spoke a lot about using a lot of prefab technologies, keeping the site work at site at a minimum, and have a lot of factory built stuff come in and we just assemble them or install them. Why is there a resistance to move towards dry walls in Calcutta when in other Western cities people have already moved towards it, and
yes,
they are successful in high rises also?
So I'll just take to. See, what happens is, you have used the word called resistance, right?
Right.
So actually, it is a psychological resistance till now that we have, because we can actually very easily, logically, do our apartment perimeter with the heavy wall, the masonry wall, and inside the partition can be very well handled by dry partition system. That is okay with us, rather than sharing a neighbor's wall, because we have an issue of sound, acoustics, because dry partition is good enough to take care of acoustics, because the hotels are in dry partition.
Right.
There is a certain amount of sourcing and cost efficacy that we need to build in dry partition though. Not every time a dry partition will be, if you save on time, there will be a little per square feet, maybe you will have to actually reduce the processes in sync with the other processes. Abhi tak hum log, we are thinking the dry partition independently and finding it expensive, or finding it not logically very compatible with the neighbor in terms of acoustical privacy, or a screw or a driving out the nail there. But internal partitions today can easily be done, and this is what we should step up and say, yes, we need to do some good arithmetics in terms of time saving, because we can actually, if not save exact cost, it is about time, because you can actually convert a huge amount of time. We can 13 to 14% of your time can be saved by doing dry partition system. So
Right.
that is a huge amount of, even if it's the same cost, you save time, you can gain up there. So ultimately you can gain up in your post-sale interests. So that's the way we should look at the design right now.
So there's one more interesting point about the perimeter to wall ratio to reduce costs in high rises or in any building. And I think the aspect ratio also of the design of the block. So in one of our projects we designed, we obviously never looked at this aspect. We always look at how the openness is there in the building. We realized that in a particular shape, which is of a plastic kind of shape, the torsion in the building was very less compared to a straight kind of a block. Now, how do we decide on which shape is best for a building to reduce structure cost, increase efficiency, reduce the wall area?
When Rohit, when you're talking about, you said about we did two designs. One was working good in terms of your ventilation factor, in terms of view and thing like that. So if I understand what you're saying,
Right.
while one worked good in terms of the structure, is that the confusion? Because it's very clear. Let's not get to a mind that it's a human psychology. Is this? We often think that a great design will not be aesthetically perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is good to understand that when you set the parameters, I need these optimum parameters. When the base design, the first design becomes the design which complies to the standards, from there you should start working on your structural efficiency. So what happens is when you have a ratios set, which we have already shared with you in the initial slides, if you initiate a design from there and then work out your ratios back for structure, you will get a higher thing rather than starting in between. But suppose you have two case studies, then you should actually analyze in terms of structure stability first, and then work out the fenestration, because fenestration's orientations can actually change. You know, windows can change, wo thoda change ho sakta hai, aesthetics can handle, and architecture can handle. But first try to optimize your structure if it is a tall building, because in tall building, a structure becomes of paramount importance. And then comes the aesthetic or the fenestration design. The fenestration design should be compatible to facilitate the structure rather than vice versa.
Perfect. Right.
Okay. So there's one more question from Mr. Kamal Periwal to Utpal, and he's asking for advice on how to save the cost of foundation in different soil conditions.
No,
Is there anything that can be achieved by architectural design? I think it's something similar, but I don't know whether we covered foundation.
No, I have covered, but what I have found out with my R&Ds in office that I have done, this itself is a topic which can be discussed as a forum itself, geotechnical foundation systems in Calcutta. Yes, there are several ways which we can do. First of all, what I said, that the testing should be perfect, and the structural engineer and the geotechnical investigators should understand the soil very carefully, that how the soil will try to be, whether it's a plastic, whether it's a very settlement prone. So on this merit, the foundation system has to be designed. Now, his question, Kamalji's question is how the architectural design can be handled. Now, I have shown a case study in a commercial building where you have seen that that using the steel runners and using very small with less thickness of concrete, we have shedded off the concrete, and thereby the dead load were this thing. Now, in doing so, we added normally, say for example, if you are looking at a flat slab of 200 and a capital depth of 350, we have the total overall depth in this slab we have gone to 400. So I have eaten up a 50 millimeter more into this floor height, which if from the architect, if he can get me that 50 more in all the floor, then well, the floor height can be brought back to the desired level. So that is one of the things that I can always say. And the other thing is the spreading of the load. The more you spread, for example, if you have have your building a little looking like a cascade, top is narrow and then like a pyramid shape. Then it's always better that the help in distributing the load, as you all can understand. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And there's one more question. As developers, I think a big challenge that we face is to get GFC drawings from all consultants involved, which are all coordinated. It's really, really tough, especially when changes keep happening. I think most developers are facing this problem that the GFCs do not come on time. And they are not coordinated in most cases, and there may be mistakes. So how can the architect help in that? I think it has to go through the architect.
I was expecting someone to write this one, and anyway, often on a lighter note, the architect can get rid of all this accountability by getting a BIM guy to coordinate. But that's not good. Okay. So here, what I would suggest, you go through the process. So normally, what happens is, I'm not talking about GFCs not released because there is an inefficiency or there is a in terms of working at the studio of an architect. But here I'm talking about, let's talk of situation that what an architect does is there are changes. Suppose there is a small change in MEP because of something value there. The architect then has to go all through the while and see how does it work with aesthetics, how does it work with the structure coordination, how it's hampering the landscape on a terrace, and then finally with all these things, if it is aesthetically not good in the elevation, somebody says, oh, what is this? Looks funny. So for the one change, he might have to do 6 layers of coordination, and that is the time which happens. Now all these things should not happen when the GFC, when you're saying the GFCs don't come, that's the reason the PID, the DBR, all the stages earlier, do your schematics so well that you need not change your GFC much then, and that will be well coordinated and include BIM there. So what happens is, if your schematics and your construction design, because your workshops, get those workshops coordinated. The architect should coordinate the CD workshops and participate the client, participate every vendor, and come out, and before he gets to making the construction drawing, release the drawing with you. So what happened, the decision making is all coordinated very well in the workshop, and it's not that in isolation. So you also participate, the viewpoints come, because sometimes the understanding comes in different sectors. We should include that in workshops. So it's not about just giving a delivery package of about 100, 200 drawings, but it's about coordination. We have seen that in our practice, for a simple residential building of a 5 lakh square feet, we must be conducting the workshops till the CD stage, the construction drawing stage. Almost about 13 to 20 workshops happen, if not more. So that's a very consolidated workshops happen, wherein the inputs are collated before we give you the drawings. So when coming the drawing stage, when you time out a project, give architects a pre-design timing. In your programming, include pre-construction stage timing. Usme sara ye time down, and then you will see you will not need to wait at your construction stage while you're asking for the drawing. And every architect actually wants the drawing to be delivered and sign up the bill and send it to you.
No, I want to add, Vivek, one point.
Yes.
There is an importance of a person named a design
Manager,
design coordinator or design manager. I think this has become, in whatever role he may be, preferably he's under the architect, he plays the pivotal role probably in doing all this, managing all, pulling this man, pulling that man, because still what we find also that you see, we are not all standardized. What we need to do, Vivek and me, what we have tried to do some standardized in our drawings, but many of the concepts themselves in while doing so, and the design manager has to pull each one of the strings and then coordinate and then finally give it to the project manager, supply the entire package. So, yeah.
Okay, I just have one more point here. Someone has given a question about the relevance of Vastu compliance. Just a final thing. I'm sure that we are not in time. So let me get clear to you that Vastu is a proper reflective science, and it is not a mere correlation of affinity or a personal subjective stuff. If every architect should know it, it's a part that we have to know. And a good design does not compromise on Vastu. So we should not think that a Vastu makes things expensive, a green building makes things expensive. It's all about knowing good architecture. So good design. So a good Vastu is nothing wrong about it. You can actually, and we have been trying now to make housing to the extent of 5 to 8 lakh square feet 100% Vastu compliant, and we have been successful in a couple of projects. So for that answer, which I see a question that yes, things can be Vastu compliant. Vastu does not mean increasing the cost. It only means sensitive planning. And there's no Vastu which talks about, I can share you, there is information, there are 2 IITs working on energy modeling of designs, which is a very fine tuning, and next 3-4 years, you will have fantastic information, and like the way you work in AutoCAD, you'll have Vastu planning layering, which you will be able to do it. That's sufficient enough for the planning and to do relevant work in the real estate. That's good enough.
That's quite interesting. There's one more question from Sanjay ji. Can you suggest some methods on how to improve cost efficiency in MEP aspects, especially STPs and ETFs and plumbing systems?
See,
I think it's a vast topic. Yeah,
it's a vast topic, but again, let's not narrow it down. We don't have right now the bandwidth or the panel in constitution to talk about MEP as a whole. But MEP, as I'm saying, please ensure that when the word schematics planning come, all the inputs, everything should be layered in the schematic stage. Do not close a schematic till you have signed off your MEP SLDs.
right.
If you have layered your thing, you will not do it. It's only about detailing in terms of that can eventually take place in the CD stages, but do not sign off a schematics. Do not sign off a sanction drawing till your schematics are closed. So even it's a request to all the promoters and the builders and developers that please give that pre-construction time in your planning in which the schematics are closed, and then you go for sanction, because sanction today is, we have to reduce the differences between sanction and schematics. So that planning time should be given. It is a lot about the costing, and a good interested consultant who can work efficiently as an enterprise can actually help you to get good efficiency. So if it's stressed and if it's stretched out, the efficiencies go low in terms of suggestions often. So
yeah, adding to Vivek's point, I would like to add one thing, that while doing this coordination and different stages that we discussed, if we can have a tracker sheet and the sign-off mechanisms from all of us, then I think in each of the stages, that helps us that will definitely help us in doing the right coordination and taking the projects forward. Thank you.
From my experience, I can just add that we've tried in residential projects, we've tried to reduce the number of risers, keep toilets back to back, so that one set of risers is enough for at least 2 to 3 toilets. I think in a common shaft also, I think if we design a bigger shaft, I think it is possible to do that.
Right.
I think we presented earlier. So I think that's all the time that we have for this session. And thank you so much again, Vivek ji and Utpal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, CREDAI, for organizing this amazing session and having me on board. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you all attending.
Thank you.
Stay safe and be positive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you.